Okay, so it's 1 o'clock and I want to go ahead and get started because I know a lot of people have got a lot of things going on right now, myself included. So welcome. Today is our 6th session of our orientation, and what we're going to focus on today is more the youth development perspective. Sorry, I'm yelling and hopefully it's not too loud, but we're going to talk about developmental levels of young people, or some people call it ages and stages. And then we're also going to talk about the asset approach to youth development. It's something that's been around for a while, kind of went away, and then is now making a comeback. So I'm going to start, I'm going to pull up the first one, and we're going to start by talking about, there we go, positive youth development. And so just a little bit about this is, whoop, going the wrong way. So we're going to, I love this little picture. I taught Stripe how to whistle, and this says, I don't hear him whistling, and I thought I said I taught him. I didn't say he learned it. And sometimes there are days that I feel like that when it comes to talking about developmental levels and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate for young people. And so, but I want everybody to, when I mention quite often about making sure that our programs are developmentally appropriate for the age of young person that we're working with. And so part of what I'm going to talk about is that, what makes it age appropriate. So we're going to start off by talking about 6 to 8-year-olds, 5 to 7-year-olds, just kind of that whole age group. And these pictures were ones of when my son was that age. They're losing lots of teeth and being goofy. The one of the group of them is actually my son at a 4-H Cloverbutt meeting. So, and then the one with his face painted is at one of the county fairs. So, and you can't really see this, but actually, it's one of those that it's kind of hard to read. I'm going to send this out. So these are puzzles, and this is always a good topic to do with our volunteers as well, because I think it's important that our volunteers understand about what's developmentally appropriate ages and stages. And so one of the ways that you can use, there's actually a puzzle for each age group. And what you can do with these puzzles is you can cut them apart into the different pieces. So, you've got blue pieces and white pieces. And then you mix them all up and you have them in groups, and you give each one an envelope, and they have to figure out, is this truly for a 6 to 8-year-old? And then also, is this truly for a 6 to 8-year-old? As well as, and then they may have to trade with other teams. And it really is, by the time it's finished, they will figure it out, and they will figure out that they have certain colors. But it's really a fun activity to do. But you can see some of the things. They're beginning to experience empathy for others. This is the 6 to 8-year-old group, or 5 to 7. It really doesn't matter. It can be either or. They're still learning about themselves, and they're still really wrapped up in themselves. It's really about me, me, me. They're mastering those physical skills. This is when they're starting to gain better control of their large muscles. They're seeking parental approval, but they're also becoming more and more emotionally steady, and they don't need their parents as often. They're learning how to sort things. I don't know how many of you have worked with this age group on a regular basis, but I can remember at this age group, we had everything sorted by color, by size, by, and it was fun, but it was, everything was sorted. They still tend to behave in ways to avoid punishment. They handle one mental operation at a time. You cannot get this age group to do more than one thing at a time. And they see fairness as being nice to others, and so that they will be nice in return. I think that that's another key piece with this, is they really see, if I'm nice to you, you need to be nice to me back, and they don't understand when that doesn't happen. And then when you look at 9 to 11-year-olds, or you can also say 8 to 11-year-olds, this is where they are really maturing at different rates. You know, this is the age group that I'm seeing now, and man, I see a huge, you know, just that huge difference in the kids and the size. At this age group, typically the girls are actually going to be a little bit bigger than the boys. You know, in height-wise and size-wise in general. This is where they really feel that loyalty to a group, a club, a gang. They like to create that code language and passwords. You know, I can remember being this age, and my friend and I, there was a tree down on a ditch bank, quarter mile from her house, and that was our club. That was our secret club. And so we would go down there, you know, and then I also looked back and I found some notebooks that my son, I was cleaning out his room the other day and found some notebooks. He had written a secret language, you know, he had the code in there and everything. So very much age appropriate. It's also at this age that they really prefer to be with members of their own sex. They're not quite mixing as far as girls and boys, etc. They have quite a bit, they're quite active, and they have boundless energy at this age. I think we all see that. They tend to admire and mimic older boys and girls. They view the right behavior by obeying the rules that are set by those that are in power, and then they like to follow the rules out of respect for authority. They also, you know, at this age, they're also starting to be a little bit rebellious. You know, they're interested in hobbies and collections. You know, I don't know how many of you have a lot of collections, but at my house, we collect stamps and we collect coins and we collect money from different countries. Let's see, what else? Right now we're collecting fishing lures. I think that's just, you know, them. But, you know, so there's lots and lots of collections. Oh, we collect rocks. I can't even tell you. I have buckets and buckets of just collections all over the house. They prefer working in groups that are cooperative rather than individually. They really find comparisons with success of others difficult, and this really is kind of that eroding of the self-confidence. You know, when we talk about what's age appropriate for you know, for clover beds, why it's not important, you know, that's starting to kind of hit right there. Even with this 9 to 11-year-olds, you know, it can be tough on them. You have to be, as the adult, you really have to be there to have that conversation with that age group of not understanding why things are happening. And then we have our 12 to 14-year-olds. This is really, you know, they're starting to mature. They're starting to be concerned about developmentally and emerging sexuality. I know the other day, I always laugh because my son will be talking and he's starting to get the squeak. His voice is starting to change, which just kills me inside because I'm not ready for that yet, but I can see it. You know, he won't get dressed at all. He won't, like when he has to take a shower, if I don't have his clothes in the bathroom, or if he hasn't grabbed his clothes and taken them into the bathroom, it's like devastating to him because he doesn't want to have to walk out of the bathroom into his bedroom to get clothes because he doesn't want anybody to see him. And, you know, so I think this is really where they're starting that. They're interested in activities that involve the opposite sex. They're starting to learn how to deal with them, starting to learn how to have conversations. We had to bring a young person. We took one of my son's friends somewhere, and I can't remember, and he was on his phone FaceTiming with a girl, like most of the ride. So the two of them were in the back kind of laughing and giggling and FaceTiming with this girl. So, you know, those things are starting to happen now. In my day, that, you know, we obviously didn't have FaceTime, but, you know, you were starting to call girls or call boys, etc. They're looking more at this age group, this 12 to 14-year-old. They're looking more towards their peers than their parents. They're really looking for that peer recognition. This is where they're going to challenge the assumptions and challenge your family values. You know, is kind of where it starts at this age group. This is where they're starting to abandon their views of parents as the end-all, be-all. They're starting to be able to think abstractly and hypothetically. They can, the way it's put is they can think about thinking. And that is so exciting when you see that change in a young person. They're ready for those in-depth, long-term experiences. You know, they're starting to be ready for those. This is, you know, really where they can start learning some of those pieces. And then we have our 15 to 18-year-olds. And this is really where they develop their own sets of values and beliefs. I always think I love that when you start seeing them become a person. You know, it's so fun when they're little and all of a sudden you realize, hey, I've got this person here instead of this baby. And then when you look at this, you know, kind of 15 to 18-year-old, they kind of do the same. I always say, you know, there's a lot of comparisons between that 6 to 8-year-old group or 5 to 7-year-old group and the 15 to 18-year-old group, besides the physical. But when you think about some of those mental capacities, sometimes they can be real similar. But, you know, they're really concerned about body image at this age. I'm waiting for the day that my son wants to take a shower on a regular basis instead of me nagging him to take a shower on a regular basis. Me going, oh God, you stink today. Would you please go take a shower? I'm waiting for the day that he wants to take like 10 showers a day. Not that I want him to, but, you know, it would be nice not to have to nag him. They are, you know, they're maturing into that abstract thinking. They can consider information and come up with different possibilities. This is really where they're starting to look for those career opportunities. They want adult leadership roles, and they're going to renegotiate their relationship with adults. Now, the one thing that I like to recommend to people is they want those adult roles, and yes, they are more they can initiate and carry out those tasks without a lot of supervision. But as the adult, you also need to be there because they could very well fail at that point. You know, they may get overextended and don't have time to complete a task, or maybe they don't know how to complete a task and they don't want to ask for help. But that's, as an adult working with that teenager, that's where you come in and really can and help improve that. They can see the viewpoint of others. I think that that's important. Okay, so we're actually going to do a couple of polls because I want to think about this. So what we're going to do is, in these polls, you are going to tell me what age group these different, there we go. So I want you to vote on the age group that you think that developmentally that task fits. So can you guys, are you able to do that? Okay. Nobody was voting, so I was just, and this is the first time I've used the polling in this system. So if you can, so there should be 5 questions. Oh, there we go. Okay. I've got 7 out of the 11 people have voted. We may just have to go with that. Okay. Anybody else think you got a C+? This is how we learn. These are the keys. And we're going to talk about each one and talk more in detail. I was giving you an overview just a second ago. Okay. Are people still voting? It looks like it. Okay, I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. Oh, 10 out of the 11. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. So we're going to share the results. So with this, you can see, so the first one, can commit to follow through with service. So 60% of you, or 6 of you, thought that that was a 12 to 14-year-old, and 40% of you thought that that was a 15 to 18-year-old. And so those of you that put 15 to 18-year-old, you are correct. That is really at the age that they can think about commitment to follow through with service. So one of the things that I want to talk about when we talk about these questions is, what are the implications for our work as youth development professionals? One, I'm going to be sending you some documents. In fact, I will. They give you the characteristics, and then they tell you about the implications. But can somebody think about a implication about can commit to follow through with service? So what's something, that we can do as a youth development professional to help move that forward, or to help young people to build that skill? And you can type that in the chat box. And when they're talking about service, they're talking about service to their community. So it'd be like community service or service learning. So any ideas of what we could do? Okay, remind, inspire, encourage. Okay. Add an incentive or recognition to their service. Okay. Okay, provide opportunities for them to become involved. The one that this document that I'm going to share, it says provide opportunities involve them in service groups, political parties. So things like Habitat for Humanity, ecology, adopt a highway, help them plan and complete a community service. Yes, I think that those are all great ideas. So when you're looking at working with 5 to 18-year-olds, that's a really good time to start thinking about that. You know, they can be planning and planning that service project. The other kids can be involved in it, but I think that's the age that it's appropriate for them to start planning those events. Okay, so they're better at throwing a ball than catching it. So then 90% of you said that was a 5 to 7-year-old, and 1 said that was an 8 to 11-year-old, and that is a 5 to 7-year-old. And so think about the implications. What should we be doing if they're better at throwing than catching? What can we do to help our young people? And that's a physical characteristic of a 5 to 7-year-old. I forgot to mention in the beginning, and I can't believe I forgot it because I usually don't. When you talk about developmental levels, one of the reasons why I always like calling it developmental levels rather than ages and stages is because there's 4 types of development that a young person has. They have physical development, cognitive development, the social development, and then their emotional development. And just because you have a young person can be at different levels, different developmentally at physical than they are at social, than they are at emotional. An example that, we've got a good friend in Idaho that is a good friend of my son, same age as my son, and he developmentally, physically developmentally, he probably looks like he's maybe 6 or 7. I mean, honestly, he barely weighed 50 pounds. He was still in a 5-point harness car seat until last year. And so, physically he looks very, very little, just this little guy, but cognitively super, super smart. I would say he's probably at a 12 to 14-year-old or probably 13 years or older. I mean, he's been reading in first grade, he was reading on a 4th and 5th grade level. But then emotionally, you can really see the difference too. Just like his physical development, emotionally, he's kind of the same way. Very immature, very socially, great kid, but just very immature. And so we have to think about, and then we had a young man on our football team this past year that physically you would have thought he was 13 or 14 years old. This kid was a big kid and as tall as I am, and almost not quite outweighed me, but he couldn't have, but big kid. But he was 9. And we kept having to remind the coaches, he's 9, because they kept thinking he was emotionally he should have been further along emotionally than he was. So, one of the things I talked about with the throwing a ball rather than catching it is when you're working with this age group, and you do activities, you want to have larger balls and provide them the chance to throw or bounce the ball rather than catch the ball. This is why this age group will play t-ball or and actually t-ball is even sometimes a little bit. Okay, so the next one, finding justice and equality to be important issues. So one of you said 8 to 11-year-old, 2 of you said 12 to 14, and 7 of you said 15 to 18-year-olds. So that one, those 2 that said that was 12 to 14-year-olds, you are correct. They are starting, that is the age that they are really, things need to be fair. Things need to be, you have to start thinking about, that justice and equality. And so can we think as professionals, what's something that we could do with that age group? Anybody have any thoughts? If you have thoughts, type them in the chat box. So if they are just finding that justice and equality are important issues, okay, have activities that can be worked on as a group or singular, and allow them a chance to work with other kids they're not close to. Yeah, I think that's a good one. This is also where you can involve them in decision making and discussion. Yes, that's exactly. Have activities where everybody wins. That could be. I think it's important both. Get them involved in county issues so that they can make a difference. That's exactly. Have them, give them the opportunity to ask and question ways that things are being done in the, in our program. I think that those are, you can start having them really look at that and look at that pretty. It's probably better at this age than even older. So their thinking is concrete, but they're beginning to think logically and symbolically. So we have, one of you said that that's an 8 to 11-year-old. 7 of you said 12 to 14, and 2 of you said 15 to 18. The one person that said that was an 8 to an 11-year-old is correct. Their thinking is concrete. If you've ever talked to an 8 to an 11-year-old, they are very concrete, but they're starting that conversation about logically and symbolically. I get this all the time. My son's teacher is having them think about things like last night, so they just finished Where the Red Fern Grows, and last night the final question on the paper, every week or every 2 chapters they have to do these questions, and they have to think about what they read and answer the questions. And the final question was, if you had a dog or a pet, would you want it to do what it does naturally? I can't remember the exact wording of it, but basically, would you want it to do what it was bred to do and maybe die at an early age, or would you want to keep it locked up in the backyard and have it live to be to old age? And they had to think about that, and it really got my son thinking about, well, I want to keep my dog because I love my dog, but I also want it to be doing what it loves to do. And so that's something, it's very concrete, but yet they could start thinking about this, thinking about it logically. And so I really appreciated that. So any other, can you think of an implication for that one? That's kind of a tough one sometimes. The one that they give in the book or in this paper is experiences involving senses are still good. And I think that's true when they have to look at all angles. So, and then cooperative and helpful, want to please. So that one is, let's see, 4 of you said 5 to 7, 5 of you said 8 to 11, and 1 of you said 12 to 14. This one really fits with the 5 to 7-year-olds. And so we think of any what's something we can do as a youth development professional to help, or that's, we know that they're cooperative and that they're helpful, that they want to please. So what can they do? What can we do to help instill that in them? I have my chat box on my other screen, which is why I keep going over to look at the other screen. Trying to make this session a little more interactive with this group. Okay, give them small tasks. Yes, ask them to be helpers at 4-H events. Those are always great. Provide simple tasks that allow them that opportunity to achieve. Yes, you know, it can be just as simple as can you go push in all the chairs, you know, to the table, or can you put, you know, something on each table, and you just tell them, you know, how to do it. Good job. One job at a time. Yes, that's exactly. Small tasks. Great. All right. Well, I'm gonna, I've got 2 more of these, but I think, you know, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna share the screen with you so I can show you what these pages look like. So this is what you're gonna get. Is it gives you a characteristic, and then what are some of the implications. So, you know, things like they're able to handle tools and materials more skillfully than during their preschool years. So this is, you're going to have to provide patient guidance, you know, when they're learning those fine motor skills like gluing, cutting, hammering, those types of things. So, like I said, I've got one of these for each age group. The one thing we need to remember with this 5 to 7-year-old group too is they're at that age, they can write, but they're really, you know, they're still learning their letters and their words. By 6, most of them can read, especially nowadays, because you can't go into kindergarten without being able to read, I swear. But it is really important at this age group that we avoid a lot of those paper and pencil activities. So this would be maybe you introduce some written skills, you know, written activities where they can develop their reading skills, or they can draw a picture. That's why we say, you know, at that age group, do not have them do record books. It will be an absolutely miserable experience for everybody involved. If, you know, the memory books are great where they're just writing down 1 or 2 word answers, but to do a full-blown record book with a full-blown story, it just does not work at all for this age group. Okay, so you can, I mean, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think it's really important that we look at these. The other piece that I have too, that you can use with the volunteers that I think is good, you can do the puzzles. The other one is, oh, I don't have it on here. I thought I did. Okay, I will make sure that it gets put on there. I'll show you what it looks like. So we've got these for each one. The other one that I have is, so these are, they're sheets that you can just type, or that you can cut up into different, and then you could give them to different people depending on how many people you have. There's 10 pages of them, and they're all of those, all of these characteristics. You can't really read all of these characteristics. They're just in a format that you could cut them up and give them to people, and then they have to guess which group that they would be in. That's always a good activity to do, I think, as well. And then you could, and then just like we, you know, I had you answer the poll questions. I think it's good. Then what you can do is have your volunteers start thinking about what are some implications for our club for this, you know, because most clubs do have such an age range, especially if you've got a community club. And it's even good to do with, especially with that younger age group, to do with teenagers. I think it's, you know, having the 15 to 18-year-olds learn about this, I think it's really, really important. Okay, so, sorry, I'm trying to go, there we go. Okay, so just a couple of things to think about when we are talking about young people is, I don't know how many of you have ever heard of the mindset of the college student. And I'm actually going to stop sharing this. I meant to share something else with you guys. Okay, I need to find where I have it. There we go. Okay. So this is, I think, okay. So this is a, do you guys see now an introduction to the mindset of the class of 2020? Is that what you're seeing? Okay, good. Thank you. So I didn't realize that they actually in this, I think it's Beloit. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it. College out of Wisconsin. Every year for the incoming freshmen put together this list of young people, or what the mindset of that college student is. So the class now, the class of 2020, is heading into their first year of college, and they're almost all 18, and they were born in 1998. So, you know, that just kills me when I hear that, but, you know, it's really, and so this is a PowerPoint that they put together. I went on to look to see what the new list, they have lists dating back to 1998, and you can actually get all of those lists. You know, you can see, so the college students in 1998, those entering, what was their mindset. But here's one. So these are, you know, this is when we're working with young people, we have to remember this. So SpongeBob has always lived in Bikini Bottom. There's always been SpongeBob since these young people were born. When you want to reach them, you better send a text. Emails are often ignored. Instant trayless ice cubes have never been a novelty. You know, I think about growing up, you know, when those started coming out, that was so cool, you know, and now, you know, it's nothing. They're all over the place. In fact, you can barely find a regular ice cube tray. When Chads were hanging in Florida, so, you know, we all have been dealing with the same issue with this year's election, with the popular vote being different than the electoral college. We were dealing with the same thing in, you know, when Florida with the hanging Chads. I'm sure most of us remember, all of the young people entering college today were being potty trained at that point. So they have no idea. So West Nile has always been a virus found in the U.S. since they were born. They've never had to watch or listen to programs at a scheduled time. They've always had TiVo. And, you know, I didn't even think about that, but very true. They've always had TiVo, so you can always, you know, or some kind of recording system. And students have always been able to question where and by whom their sweatshirts were made or their clothing was made. You know, think about growing up. Did we even question where our clothing was being made, whether it's U.S. or wherever? But this group has always been able to question that. They disagree with their parents as to which was the first Star Wars movie, you know, or Star Wars episode. You know, my generation will be very clear that it was the ones, you know, it was 4, 5, and 6 are the first, and, you know, but this generation is completely different. This one I thought was really interesting. There's always been a Bush and a Clinton campaigning for something big during their lifetime. And you think about that. Very true. They've never seen billboard ads for cigarettes. And so this is just a little bit about that mindset list. I just thought, and then I have a few others that I thought were kind of cool, or, you know, kind of interesting. So They don't know who Mork was or where he came from. For those of you, I know we have some younger staff members, you probably don't even know who Mork is and where he came from. The United States has always been at war since this set of college students has come into or has been born. Vladimir Putin has always called the shots at the Kremlin. They don't remember Mikhail Gorbachev or gosh, I just drew a blank on the person after Gorbachev. But each year that they've been alive, the U.S. population has grown by more than 1 million Latinos, and I think that is really critical, especially in our work. Their lifetime has always included AIDS. They have no memory of Bob Dole promoting Viagra. I think many of us on here remember those commercials and are still sometimes traumatized by those commercials. There's always been MTV. John Elway and Wayne Gretzky have always been retired. And again, that just kills me. They've always been owners of a franchise. You know, John Elway is a partial owner in the Broncos now and is the manager of the Broncos. And Wayne Gretzky, I believe, owns one of the hockey teams. Peregrine falcons have never been on the endangered species list. And then Michael J. Fox has never spoken publicly about Parkinson's disease. So you think about some of those things, you know, that really does impact how young people think. You know, there's been so many changes in the world. And if you haven't ever looked these up, I would suggest they are, more than anything, it just kind of makes me giggle. When I first started doing these, you know, they've never taken a swim and thought about Jaws. Bottle caps have always been screw-on and plastic. Now you can buy actually glass bottles again, but they usually have a twist off top. They've always had an answering machine. Jay Leno had always been on The Tonight Show. Now that's changed, but popcorn has always been able to be cooked in the microwave. They can't imagine not having a remote control for the TV. You know, some of those things I think are, when we're working with young people, we just have to remember some of that mindset. And then the other piece, as when you think about the frame of reference, so, you know, this was the kind of the teenager, but think about the mind frame of a 9-year-old. So perhaps as educators of young people, we need to keep in mind this list when we're working with that group. You know, these are the kinds of things that are buzzing through the minds of a young person. So these are things that they've learned. When they asked a 6-year-old what they've learned, I've learned that if you spread the peas out on your plate, it looks like you ate more. I've learned that you should never jump out of a second-story window using a sheet as a parachute. When I asked, and that was a 10-year-old, if you were to ask my then 6-year-old, he would tell you, I learned you never jump off the hay wagon when Grandpa convinces you it's okay, because he knocked out his 2 bottom teeth doing that. So, you know, they learned some things. I've learned that you shouldn't confuse a black crayon with a Tootsie Roll. I've learned that when you have 3 of your wild friends in the car, the driver freaks, and moms are usually the drivers. I've learned that you can't hide a piece of broccoli in a glass of milk. I've learned that when you wave at people in the country, they stop what they're doing and wave back. I've learned that if you laugh and drink soda pop at the same time, it will come out your nose. I've learned that goldfish don't like Jell-O. And I've learned that girls sweat as much as boys. So again, you know, those are just kind of those, I mean, that's in fun, but again, that's a mindset of this age group. These are the things that are going through their head. They're not thinking about, with this younger group. And someday I would like to just go up to a young person and ask him, like go up to some kids and say, so what's on your mind right now? And have them tell me, what's on their mind. I think it would be really interesting. All right, are there any questions regarding the developmental levels of young people? Not seeing anything. Again, these are great activities to do. I think it's always great to do with volunteers. This could be one of those 30-minute, or even, you could even do it in about 15 or 20 minutes. You can't have a real good, rich discussion. We have, of course, it's hard to have a discussion on this because it's kind of a one-sided conversation. But we've been going for about 45 minutes, but you could have a good discussion in about 30 minutes with volunteers about developmental levels. So now I'm going to go on, if there's no questions, I'm going to go on to the asset approach. And so this one, if you've not heard of the Search Institute out of Minneapolis, it is, like I said, it was something, gosh, back in the mid-90s, really popular. Search Institute was created by Peter Benson. He has now since passed away, but it's still going. But they would go into schools and go into communities and do an assessment, I can't remember what they called it, but essentially an asset survey. And so what they came up with was the asset approach. So they found that there are 40 building blocks of development. It's what those young people need to succeed or need. And then if they have those, then that's when they're going to thrive and be successful. And so that's what happens when they have those 40 assets. So of those, it's a framework of developmental assets that identifies crucial relationships, experiences, opportunities, and personal qualities that children and adolescents need to grow up to be that healthy, caring, and productive citizen. They did those surveys of 6 to 12th graders that showed they did thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of these surveys. And it showed the more assets that a young person can experience, the more likely they are to make positive choices and avoid high-risk behaviors. If you look at the Tough study results, that are showing that 4-Hers are less likely to be involved in risky behaviors, and then look at the developmental assets, you're going to see some comparisons there. And as we look at some of these assets that young people should have, you're going to see that 4-H provides that. So on average, a young person will only experience about 18 of the 40. I think it's going to be absolutely impossible for any young person to be involved in all 40, potential of 40 assets. But, I think it's critical that the more that they have, they know that the better that they are, or better that they do as adults. So there's two different sets of assets. There are 20 external assets. So those are things like support, empowerment, boundaries and expectations, and then the constructive use of time. So we're going to talk a little bit about those external assets. So things like support. So those include family support. These are where you get the family support, positive family communications. This is where you get into the actual assets. So family support. That's where the family provides high levels of love and support. Positive family communications. The young person and his or her parents communicate positively, and the young person seeks out the advice and counsel from their parents. The other adult relationships, Many of you have heard me say time and time again that a young person needs to have at least 3 caring adults besides immediate family. And this is where that one really falls in. Young person should receive support from 3 or more non-parent adults. And so, again, you can see that 4-H right there. That is our niche. The caring neighbors, young person experiences caring neighbors. Honestly, in today's society, how often do you think that happens? I know that in so many of the communities that I've lived in, I didn't know my neighbors. Neighbors didn't talk. They didn't, it just is a different environment. I know it seems like everywhere I've ever lived, with the young people that lived in my neighborhood, I always seem to draw them. When I lived in Idaho the first time, when I first graduated from college, I lived in a duplex complex, or not a duplex, a townhouse complex. And the neighbor was an older lady, and I got to know her, but she had a grandson, and he used to come over to my house all the time. Now, one, I had a cat, and he liked to play with the cat. But number 2, because I was, I welcomed him and talked to him and etc. And then when we lived in North Dakota, I had a young person that would come to our house. She was probably 12 or 13. You could tell that, she was home alone a lot in the afternoon, because that's when she'd kind of show up, and just wanted to hang out. And, because I talked to her and everything, it was great, So it's that important, and I still feel that way, with the kids in our neighborhood. In fact, last night I got home from the airport, and the neighbor boys were walking their dogs. I was like, "Oh, Shannon, you have to stop. I have to be able to," I said, "I haven't I haven't had a chance to meet your dog yet," because they got 2 dogs, they're brothers, and they got 2 dogs. And I was like, "I have to meet your dog," And so I think that's, you always have to stop and talk to them. The caring school environment, that school provides a caring, encouraging environment. Parents' involvement in schooling. This is where I think it's really important that we let our own parents know too how important it is that they be involved in their child's school. My mom always laughs at me and says, the school that my son's in now is going to be so thankful when he leaves next year, because I may not be involved. I'm not able to be involved in the PTA or some of those things just because of my schedule, but I make sure that that teacher knows who I am, that I'm in helping out whenever I can in the classroom, and the principal, make sure the principal knows me, etc. I think that's really important. Some of the things that we can do, I've got a sheet, you can't really see it because it's tiny, but I've got a sheet I'm going to pass. These are asset building ideas for youth workers. So when you think about the kind of that support piece that we just talked about, one of the things that we can do as a youth development professional is smile at young people. I think it's really important that we smile at people. Don't be crabby. Learn the names of the young people. Greet them when you see them. I always feel like it's really important. Another personal story that I have, so when I worked in Michigan, we ran an after, I think I've shared it with a few of you different times, but we ran an after school program. And the first time we did it, we had great attendance. Second time we did it, I had a different person running it. It was an AmeriCorps worker, and he did not feel like it was important to know the names of the children involved. He would just, "Hey, you, come over here. Hey, you," and I went in one day and taught the class, and by the time I left, I knew all the kids' names, and I greeted them by name, etc. And needless to say, that program, everybody quit coming because of that, not knowing people's names. And I think, you're not going to know every kid in your 4-H program, but it's important to get to know the ones that you can. And then also, ask the young people about themselves and what their interests are, and also listen to them. I think that that's important. Then you have the empowerment. So that's where the community values youth. This is where the young person perceives that adults in the community value youth. This is where those youth coalitions can be really critical. That you have things going on in your community for young people. I think that is, and it doesn't have to be a whole community, like I'm thinking of here in Reno. So it's not the whole community. I think about the program that you're doing, Samantha, in some of the housing areas. I think that shows, you're there, you have activities for the kids, you're providing them with food. Hopefully that gives them that sense of, adults are caring, and the community cares about me. Youth as resources, that they're given, youth are given useful roles in the community. That's another piece. That service to others, they serve their community. This is the one, young person serves in their community 1 hour or more per week. And I think that's one where we really can help as well, because 4-H, we're always promoting service to community. And then safety, that the young person feels safe at home, school, and in their neighborhood. This is one of the reasons why we stress so much about providing an emotionally and physically safe environment when they're at a 4-H event. Some of the things that we can do on our end is invite young people to share their gifts and their talents with their community. If you have a sense that a young person they aren't safe doing something or being in a certain area, then you should intervene and ensure that they're in their safety. And then notice when a young person is doing something right, and always encourage that. Say something to encourage them to continue that behavior. The next one is boundaries and expectations. So, we think about all ages of kids, and all ages of kids want boundaries. They really do. They may say that they don't, but they really truly do. So family boundaries, that there are clear expectations and consequences, and that somebody is monitoring that, where that young person is. That the school has boundaries. There are clear rules and consequences. The neighborhood boundaries. I don't know how many of you grew up in neighborhoods, but I grew up out in the country too, but I pretty much knew at that time all of the neighbors, and I could not go. We had a little park. It's about 1.5 miles from my parents' house. And, that park was known for, people would go there, to do things that they shouldn't be doing. And I always looked at people going, I can't go there, because the person that lived right next door to the park, they could see the park and see all the cars there. He knew my car, and I could already guarantee you by the time I got home, my parents would have already known that I had been there. And so I think that's, that is important. And I don't have a problem, if somebody's doing something in our neighborhood that they shouldn't be doing, I will go out and tell them, hey, you need to please stop doing that. Somebody's going to get hurt. Adult role models, parents and other adult role models, that you're a positive and responsible behavior. Positive peer influences, that the young person's best friends model responsible behaviors. And that we have high expectations. Both parents and teachers encourage the young person to do well. This is where, we don't want to have, if the bar is here and we know that they can be here, then you want to actually set it about right here, because you want them to strive to, and have higher expectations. And then constructive use of time. The creative activities. A young person spends at least 3 or more hours in lessons or practice in the music, theater, or other types of arts. Youth programs. Youth spends 3 or more hours per week in sports, clubs, or organizations at school or community organizations. Again, that's where 4-H really fits into that. Religious community, young person spends 1 hour or more per week in activities in a religious institution. And then time at home, young person is out with friends with nothing special to do 2 or fewer nights per week. So that's one that that is important too, I think. So when you look at, I forgot to talk about the kind of some of the things. So the boundaries and expectations, knowing the boundaries of your organization that everybody agrees upon, with after school programs, maybe you've sat down with the kids and talked to them. These are the boundaries that we have for our program. These are the rules that we have, and have them be a part of those rules. Enforce those boundaries if you see an infraction. Instead of being really harsh with that young person, redirect them into a better activity or a better way of acting. Think of your enforcement as a teaching method. I think that that's another really critical piece. And then think and act in the ways that you want young people to follow. You're a role model, and that the young people are always watching you and listening to you. And then that constructive use of time. Talk to the kids in your program about what activities they're involved in and which ones they enjoy most. You may find that 10 of the kids are involved, or if you've got 50 kids in your county that are all in music lessons and that they love it. What a great opportunity to start a county band or a county, I don't know I know Carol has Carol's looked at it a little bit, the Clovers and Company out of Georgia. It is not a 4-H project. It is, what it is it's an activity that young people have to try out for. They have a band, a musical group, and then they also have singing. And it's a big, big deal to be selected for Clovers and Company. And so, but that's one thing that they do. A lot of counties do those kinds of, do that kind of stuff. And so it's, I think that's, or have a 4-H talent show night and have your 4-Hers show off their talents. That's another good example. And then spend time, make the time that you spend with the young people meaningful. Play with the children, talk to the teens, don't just be there. All right, any questions about the external assets? And again, I'm going to share with you all of these. And in the PowerPoint that I'll be sending to you, it talks about each one of these. Plus, there is a sheet of paper that it's a piece of paper from from Search Institute that you can share with, or that you can use. You can share it with your parents, and it actually has all of these definitions. So when you look at internal assets, those are things like commitment to learning, positive. These are things that young people do within themselves, but we can help instill that within them. So our commitment to learning, the young person is motivated to achieve in school or to do well in school. School engagement. Sorry. Young person is actively engaged in learning, and that can be within 4-H as well. They're actively involved in their learning process through 4-H, which, we all know that happens because we are using experiential learning model where they have to be. They're doing the activity and then figuring out what they learned from it. Homework. This was one, I'm not really sure, but a young person reports doing at least 1 hour of homework every school day. And I think that can be a variety of ways. That could be a reading, that could be, I'm also, I've got teachers, the last several years, we've had teachers that believed in at least 2 to 3 hours of homework a night, which kind of contradicts that being at home with your family. Because I don't know about at anybody else's houses, but when it comes to homework, it's a constant battle. But I think it is important to do some kind of, something little. Bonding to school. The young person cares about his or her school. That they're picking up garbage in the playground, that they, feel proud to wear their shirt from their school. And reading for pleasures. So things like a young person reads for pleasure at least 3 or more hours per week. So this isn't a book that they've been assigned to school. This isn't, this is a book that, or something that they're reading. Even nowadays, if they're reading articles on the internet, if they've got their computer or their phones out and they're reading articles on the internet, I think that's okay. When you think about that, share your values of learning. Ask young people about school and whether they're completing their homework. You can tell them about a good book, or ask them to tell you about a good book that they've read lately. Some of you that are in small communities, it's probably easier for you to do, but I think if you can try to attend a school function, maybe there's a school play that you have a lot of 4-Hers that are involved in, that are in the play. Maybe you can go to that play and connect with them at the end. Let them know that you were there and that you were that you were excited to be there. Then we have our positive values. So the young person places high value on helping other people. I think that that's something, again, we do that a lot in 4-H. The equity and social justice. Young person places high value on promoting equality and reducing hunger and poverty. Integrity. The young person acts on convictions and stands up for his or her beliefs. The honesty. A young person tells the truth even when it's not easy. Responsibility. The young person accepts and takes personal responsibility. And restraint. Young person believes it's important not to be sexually active or use alcohol or other drugs. So when you think about those, I think that this is where it really comes into, we need to be role models. Talk about, I think it's okay sometimes to talk about your values with young people and why you have them, so that they can see, and talk to them about struggles with those, coming up with those values. Own your own mistakes. If you tell a white lie, admit it. If you're too tired to care, say so. Show the young person that acting on your values isn't always easy, and that admitting when you haven't is also a positive value, and that you have integrity. And then show them how to solve problems with the values that they have. Social competency. The young person knows how to plan ahead and make choices. The interpersonal competency, that the young person has empathy, sensitivity, and friendship skills. I had always said, if I had a boy, I was going to raise that boy with empathy, because a lot of males are not raised with that. My own husband is a prime example. He's okay, but there's a lot of times that the empathy factor is pretty much nil. And so, and I feel like we're working on it, and I've got a very caring young person now, and I think that is, I think that that's important. And there's ways we can do that within 4-H. Cultural competencies, they have a knowledge and comfort with people from different cultures, racial and ethnic backgrounds. Resistance skills, that a young person can resist negative peer pressure in dangerous situations. And peaceful conflict resolution. Young person seeks to resolve conflict non-violently. And so when you think about those, one of the things that we can do is, because these to me are all big things. I mean, they're not going to be learned by a 6-year-old. There are times some of these pieces I'm still trying to learn. And so by breaking down those skills into manageable steps, being a friend means knowing how to listen, knowing how to negotiate, express affection in appropriate ways, how to resolve conflicts peacefully. I think those are pieces, if you can just take a piece and help a young person understand that. Notice when a young person has skillfully stood up for themselves and resisted a dangerous situation. And, you know, tell them how much you admire that and on how they acted, and then integrate these skill buildings into the programs and the activities that we're doing. I think that, you know, we can do that. And then the last one is positive identity. So personal power. The young person feels he or she has control over things that happen to me. The self-esteem, they report having a high self-esteem, sense of purpose. They report that they feel like their life has a purpose. And the young person, the positive view of a personal future. The young person is optimistic about his or her personal future. And so ways that we can do things to help that is compliment the young person. Discuss how community and world events can influence a person's outlook on the future. Talk about how having a positive outlook, you know, about the importance of having a positive outlook when life can get difficult. Or ask that young person again about their talents and their abilities, and help them identify and strengthen those talents and abilities. Oh, that's the end of that PowerPoint. Okay, so, you know, those are, I think, like I said, you know, I don't know any kid that's going to have all 40 of those assets. But what they're showing is the more assets that they have, the better prepared they are to be an adult. Kind of like when we talk about, you know, 4-H, our goal is to help them reach, you know, to become a competent, caring, and contributing member of society as an adult. That's basically, you know, by looking at these developmental assets. And so there's several documents that are helpful in this. You know, there is an asset approach. I'm going to share this one. Oops. So there's this asset approach to positive community change. Again, you know, it just talks about being in a community and what you can do, and thinking about, and these are great if you're involved in a youth community coalition. If you've got a group within your community that gets together and talks about issues of young people in that community, or all the youth serving organizations come together, then this is a great way to do that. There is so much information from the Search Institute. I mean, I can't even begin to scratch the surface. But I wanted everybody to be aware of this approach, because I think I personally have always really liked the asset approach. I think it's a positive way to look at our young people, and it's a good positive approach when thinking about working with young people, and it ties in so nicely with our essential elements and those other pieces. Are there any questions, or anybody have any thoughts about how you know, you can use this asset approach within your 4-H program? Everybody's quiet now. Okay, you like it. Yeah. To me, it just makes sense. Okay, and I'm going to send you all of this information, like I said, so you can have opportunity to look at it a little closer. And I highly recommend that you go and look at the Search Institute and look and see all of the resources. They have lots of stuff on their website, tons of stuff on their website. So, all right, well, that is all I have for today. Just to remind everybody, the next session is, I had to reschedule that if you didn't get the email. It was again, that family involvement in school and making sure it's important. My sons just found out, you know, like probably last Friday, Thursday or Friday, that my son's Christmas program is on the 13th, and which was the day I had this scheduled at the exact same time. So I rescheduled the next session. It will be December 19th. I was really trying to avoid that week before Christmas, but that was the only date that really worked on my calendar. So December 19th from 1 to 2:30, and we're going to talk about the targeting life skills model and experiential learning. So those are two of the approaches that we take, or, you know, two theories or et cetera in youth development that we use a lot. So please join me then. And we will, yeah, it's been great. Thank you guys for joining. Have a wonderful, have a great weekend. Gosh, it's already the weekend. It feels like I just got into the office, which I did. I'll be out all of next week, but I will be checking email as much as I can. So.